So I promised you my scientific frame, and in order to deliver that, I need to explain something to you. And this is the idea of the whisper. So if you've ever been in a loud environment, maybe a bar, a restaurant, a cafe, something like that, you've potentially come across this. This is an easy place to find it. If you're with someone else and they lean in to tell you something with a whisper, it might be a secret, it might be something they just don't want the table next to you to hear. That creates this monoideistic focus, this single-pointed focus where you lose yourself and you lose the world around you and you become fixated on what they're saying for a moment. You shut out the rest of the world. You get a monoideistic focus, a single-pointed focus on them and what they're saying. And this whisper is how I explain it. It's a whisper to the central nervous system. It's a whisper to the body, the somatic system, rather than a whisper to the mind that creates the monoideistic focus within that conscious mind. And what that results in is that same monoideistic focus happening in the body instead of the conscious mind. We've bypassed the language center, we've bypassed the conscious mind and gone straight into the body mind, the unconscious, the superconscious, whatever you want to call it. That part of you that's out of conscious awareness just now. And it may be that some people are good with external sensory acuity. Maybe they have a good sense of kinesthetic sensitivity. Maybe they have a good internal kinesthetic imagination. And they may be actually feeling the passes, they may be imagining they feel the passes, both of which are going to create that monoideistic focus in their conscious mind as well as the body. But the body's feeling whatever's happening. And if you move your hand over your arm, you'll probably feel the heat. Some of you might not. But the heat's there, it's coming off your hand. And with a little bit of training, you can start to feel that heat. You can feel the static of a static balloon or a Van de Graaff generator. If you're getting close to a Van de Graaff generator, your hair will start standing up before you even touch it because the static charge is jumping to you. So we can feel static and we can feel heat. And there's a possibility that there's other forces that we are not aware of yet. We'll touch on those more in the more esoteric perspective that we'll look at later. But even just with these two, even just with the static electricity and the heat, there's enough there to create a whisper in the central nervous system. And what this results in is, as I say, this monoideistic single-pointed focus within the body mind instead of the conscious mind. It may happen alongside the conscious mind. Now, if you've ever experienced a Reiki session, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. That first session, most people are lying there wondering if they're supposed to be feeling something. They're looking for that sensation. Their mind's searching for that sensation to let them know that this is working. And in that search, they become in a fixated monoideistic trance, generally. Their body's also feeling for that sensation and doing the same thing. So we get a whole mind focus instead of just a conscious mind focus that then leads to a deeper level of focus. And if we look at the science behind this, like the Reiki session is a good example here because there's an intent by the client, the cooperator, to have this problem worked on. And they've chosen you as the practitioner to help them with this for some reason. Maybe reviews, maybe word of mouth, whatever it happens to be. Maybe they've seen you on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. Whatever it is, they've chosen you. So they've got will and intent engaged. You as the operator have accepted them as a client, so you know what their problem is. You've got the intent and the will engaged to help them with that problem. This is very similar to a content-free hypnotic session. Is there a difference? The difference is it's a somatic induction into a content-free hypnotic state and session rather than a verbal induction to a content-free hypnotic state. So are we seeing the same thing being done with a somatic induction over a verbal induction? This is the question. The science shows us that the touch passes that Mesmer would do would produce an increase in delta brainwaves. This has been shown in the research into havening. and it slow passes down the arms and touches on the head and things like that, head massages. All of these things are producing these delta brainwaves. Now, delta brainwaves, while they do occur through a waking state, they're generally more associated with deep sleep cycles, restorative sleep, beyond like REM sleep, and in those deep meditative states, deep hypnotic states, things like that. So we're producing that with the touch passes. The no-touch passes seem to produce a parasympathetic arousal, a peace response within the system. Now, this seems to happen when the individual doing the passes believes that they can do something. The interesting thing is that they repeated these studies with rats, so there was no expectancy from the co-operator that anything would happen. You know, rats don't have an expectancy when some human's waving their hands over them for anything to happen, but they still see a parasympathetic activation in the rats. So there's something happening, and that only happens, by the way, when people believe that they can do this. If they don't believe in Reiki, if they don't believe in the ability to channel some universal energy, this doesn't happen. They have to have a belief system in place, and that belief system might just be that any human can do this and it's something to do with some unknown science that we've not worked out yet, rather than a universal fluid. But the belief has to be there, and the rats have a parasympathetic arousal. Very strange. And then there's the fascination side of things. So eye fixation, eye gazing has been shown to increase suggestibility. And this is where the operator training their gaze becomes important, because whoever has the stronger frame in that eye fixation gaze gains the upper hand, and the co-operator, so they become the operator and the subject becomes the co-operator, and the co-operator's suggestibility increases. So there's an increase in suggestibility happens with eye contact, there's a parasympathetic with no touch passes, and there's a delta frequency increase with touch passes. So we have some science proving basically all of the aspects of mesmerism, animal magnetism, whatever you want to call it, and fascination. And, you know, there's a lot more to this that I'll touch on in the more esoteric frame, but it's important to understand that these are just frames. You know, we can have multiple different frames. This is the frame I use when I'm explaining it to modern minds, to modern scientific people that like facts and figures and evidence-based stuff, because this is the evidence that backs up what Mesmer was doing. We can also see things like the crisis that happens, the shaking, the release, the crying, all of this stuff is happening in breath work, it's happening in TRE, it's happening in various different somatic release systems. These new forms of therapy aren't new, they're old, being regurgitated and renamed and represented to the world in a new package. The underlying mechanisms that allow them to work are the same mechanisms that Mesmer was looking for in his crisis. You know, Poissager found that you didn't need to produce that crisis, and the same thing happened with hypnosis. You know, there's an element of, like in things like EFT and matrix re-imprinting, there's a crisis, abreactions, things like that. And some of the early hypnotists would look for these abreactions, which is a new name for the crisis, essentially. But we don't need that to happen. We can bypass the abreaction. They don't need to relive the trauma and re-experience it in order to clear it. You know, the crisis within the central nervous system, within the body, this is a very similar thing. You know, we don't need the body to release that. It can be released in the body, and that's very good. But this ties into the four worlds theory, which I'll cover in the esoteric frame next. So I'm going to try and keep this firmly in the science realm, if you get me. So essentially, you know, we've covered the touch passes, the no touch passes, and the eye contact. This idea of the whisper of the central nervous system is the frame that I use and have been using for the last decade. I don't believe anyone else has spoken of it like this. So as far as I'm aware, this is my baby. And if you use this, please give me credit, but feel free to use it all you like, because this is the best frame that I've come across. And I've looked at a lot of frames for this, for the sort of the modern mind to gain a grasp of it. And you can even let them feel the sensations. So we'll go into that in the drills and in some of the exercises for actually developing this skill of somatic suggestion going forward. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and check out the science stuff that I'll pop in below covering all of this, the touch passes, no touch passes, and the eye contact stuff. And I hope to see you on the next video, where we'll look at the more esoteric, woo-woo, crazy, quantum field theory, thought form stuff, and give you a different frame that you can use with the more spiritual and esoterically inclined client. So see you in the next one.